I always said that Muay Thai found me when I was 19 years old, and I'm very lucky because if I hadn't found Muay Thai or Muay Thai hadn't found me back then, today I'd have a needle in my arm, I'd be dead or I'd be in jail. Toxic masculinity is masculinity in the absence of internal femininity. Social media has torn us apart. Social media has made us believe we're on the opposite sides. Social media is always now constantly focusing on you're either this or you're that. Just talking from your emotions doesn't help anything. It's important to understand your emotions, articulate your emotions, process your emotions. It's not about dividing the feminine and the masculine. It's about uniting it. As a man, you have no worth in your youth. And it's that simple. You have to work hard at the gym. You have to pursue careers. You have to take risks. You have to develop those masculine traits.
Frankie, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Frankie, thank you. Frankie, you have been involved in contact sports or combat sports for over 22 years. You've had some pretty remarkable, pivotal moments, but can you take me back? How did you build yourself up from the ground up?
Oh, depends how far back you want to go, James. So look,
let's go all the way, mate. How'd you get into it?
So I'll give you a little snapshot about my upbringing, just a quick one. I was born in Iran, but moved with my family to Perth, Australia when I was 5 years old. A very traditional ethnic household, very loving household, but very much the old school ethnic ways where, you know, as a man, you have to work your way up. You got to either be like, you know, a lawyer, a doctor, accountant. So there was a lot of pressure on me growing up. That also came with a lot of the challenges that a lot of us men face, where we get taught that our value and our self-worth and being loved is based on our performance. So my high school years, there was a lot of insecurities. There was a lot of bullying. I was quite a soft, gentle child. But then somewhere around the age of 17, 18, everything flipped on its head. A combination of my mum passing away from cancer rapidly, the bullying catching up to me, a toxic young relationship that I was in, quickly led me down to a really dark path. So I ended up being involved in drugs, crime, close to homelessness, a really dark path. And I always said that Muay Thai found me when I was 19 years old. And I'm very lucky because if I hadn't found Muay Thai or Muay Thai hadn't found me back then, today I'd have a needle in my arm, I'd be dead or I'd be in jail. And I always say that statement and it sounds full on, but that was absolutely the path that I was on. So I was blessed at that time, joined up Riddler's gym in Perth for the guys that are in the Muay Thai community, Riddler's probably one of the top level coaches in Australia, if not the world. I was lucky to start with him when he was in his garage. So I was one of his first fighters and one of his first coaches, and transformed my life around. Within 6 months, when I was deep into drugs, crime, and close to homelessness and severely overweight, to then losing 30 kilos, starting to compete, enrolling university, studying my accounting and finance double major. And as they say, the rest is history. From there, I went down the path of competing, then went the path of coaching while I was an accountant. But as you could imagine, my personality type didn't suit accounting. So quite quickly, I fell back into deep depression, which had plagued me for most of my life. Packed up, went to the UK, taught out of a gym called Diesel Gym there, found the love to become a full-time Muay Thai coach, came back to Perth, set up Diesel Gym there, grew it to one of the largest in WA. But again, all of the demons that were inside of me plagued me still. They were still deep in my soul. As much as I tried to achieve and perform and find that self-worth externally, it didn't matter what I achieved in my life. That foundation inside of me was toxic. So went through 2 divorces, unfortunately, during the 8 years I had Diesel. Even though we grew to 750 members, it ruined me. And then I've always said my business health was directly a correlation to my mental health. So when that collapsed underneath me, I hit rock bottom again. And it was the time to really go deep into my own journey. So I started my soul searching. I started doing different types of healing and modalities. On the back of that, studied my master's in counseling, and alongside of that, created the business coaching program. So today we've got the Fight Business Coach, which is the business coaching for combat sports gyms to help them grow, not only through their finances, their marketing, their gym growth, but also them as leaders. And I've recently launched my passion project, which is the Fighter's Mindset, which is performance coaching for fighters from a trauma-informed therapy perspective. So it's not I always say it's not the David Goggins motivational abuse. It's a lot more based on them finding their why, their self-belief, their drive, the things they need to not only last longer in the sport, but also improve their lives. And that's my 3-minute pitch of the past 25 years.
Wow, that's what a journey. What a remarkable journey you've been on, Frankie. How did your experiences with, business, downfalls and divorces shape your current approach to helping others, particularly men?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's a really interesting part. So after I quit my accounting degree, I really focused on my own journey. So I actually started personally about, when I was 30 years old, down the path of Buddhism and getting help from psychologists and talk therapy. And a lot of the things that I experienced during that time, I really struggled to resonate with. Buddhism was beautiful. Don't get me wrong. That I think is the foundation of self-help. However, every time I saw a psychologist, every time I saw a counselor, there was something really lacking that didn't resonate with me. So everything that I focused on has been trying to build tools to improve my life and then to help others. So in Muay Thai saved my life. Then I got the ability to be able to help others by coaching them in the sport and helping them improve their life. The business coaching was the same. And now the mindset coaching is the same as well, because what I found is, as a man, especially nowadays, there's a lot of different terms thrown out there: masculinity, femininity, toxicity. And it's very confusing nowadays for a lot of men to know what a healthy man is supposed to be, what the healthy masculine is supposed to be. I don't like using the words that are thrown around in Instagram much nowadays, but even when we consider toxic masculinity, there's so many different variables to that. And truly, I find the way I was raised and the way society expected of me to always perform and achieve in order to be accepted at my peak created me into what I consider a toxic masculine man, where I heavily focused on only the masculine traits: achievement, competitiveness, assertiveness, decisiveness, just the logical side. And what I realized over the years in my own journey, and this is what I apply to the business, to the fighters and to the men that I help as well, is toxic masculinity is masculinity in the absence of internal femininity. And what I mean by that is, if you only push for the drives of a masculine, if you only focus on the logical, the achievements, the assertiveness, the competitiveness, and you just want to get, achieve, get more, then that in itself becomes very toxic, because you can't balance it with the feminine needs of compassion, kindness, empathy, which is someone, as men in our place, we need to develop internally. So a lot of what I work is based on teaching these high achievers on how to also tap into the rest and the healing components that they need. And I even want to take it a step further, where when we talk about masculinity or even toxic masculinity, I don't mean a man or a woman. Like it happens on both ends. When I work with athletes, male or female, they are highly driven in their masculine-led approach. They are assertive, competitive, logical, constantly looking for achievement. Everything that they do is based on their win. And that's what ultimately tears them apart, because as most of us know, and when I hit what I thought was the peak in my business, everything that I wanted to achieve, that was when I was the most ruined. Like, that was the moments in my life where I truly didn't want to live. I wasn't suicidal, but I looked at my life and I go, this is not the life I want to live. And for a lot of the athletes that I work with, when they achieve their state title, their national recognition, when they achieve that goal, is when they actually fall apart, because they've been so focused on the achievement and the goal. They haven't really shown that empathy, compassion, gratitude for themselves. So that's where a lot of the focus steps in for myself and the work I do with athletes, men and business owners.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Frankie. I think we are in a bit of a situation right now where young boys are confused about what it means to be a man, masculinity, what it means to be masculine in this day and age. You have people like Andrew Tate. You have a lot of men watching red pill content, have these unique ideologies, in particular with regards to the Matrix analogy. You take the red pill or you take the blue pill. But yeah, it's an interesting thing right now. What do you think we're getting wrong with masculinity and what it means to be a man in society?
I think what we're getting wrong in society, full stop, is the lack of internal accountability and self-work and the focus externally. Men or women. Social media has torn us apart. Social media has made us believe we're on the opposite sides. Social media is always now constantly focusing on you're either this or you're that. There's such a divide between us as a society, and instead of people looking at what they need to heal internally, they're constantly putting blame on the external. And this is what's fueling a lot of it. What's missing is that internal development, internal drive, internal focus, internal accountability, and most importantly, your internal why. This is one of the biggest focus I have with the athletes that I work with. What's your why? Why are you doing this? And really looking internally, because for a lot of us, like, the why ends up being because we've been told we need to be this. But when we look deeper, it doesn't work like that. And I've worked with a lot of young boys. I've got a nephew myself as well who's struggling to understand what a man is. But I think what's really missing is that development internally. I think there's been such a divide between a man needs to be masculine and a woman needs to be feminine, when internally we have both those energies ourselves, and we just need to see which part needs to be nurtured.
Did you happen to watch the show Adolescence on Netflix?
I've heard a lot about it. I've avoided it because I think those things have been quite triggering for me.
Yeah.
Because I see a certain agenda being pushed, and I don't want to go down that conspiracy rabbit hole. I see a certain agenda pushed from every angle, and that agenda is very different to what a lot of people talk about. I'm not talking about the war on masculinity. I'm not talking about the feminism movement. I'm not talking about any of the deep conspiracies. I'm talking about what we ultimately have done for a long time, but social media has significantly accelerated this, and that's the capitalist marketing market, where people find out what your pain points are and they sell on it. And right now, because of social media, 30 years ago, you used to drive past a billboard. You'd open up your letterbox and have a couple of flyers. You used to open up the yellow pages. Today, we are bombarded and brainwashed. And I've been caught in this trap. I've watched some Andrew Tate content, and after a few reels, after a few videos, and my Instagram explore page is bombarded with his stuff, I'm like, oh, this is saying some interesting stuff. Then I dated a very educated feminist and then started watching some of the content she did. And I was like, oh my God, it's terrible what's happening out there with women. And we actually compared our social media. And on the same post, the comments she got at the top versus the comments I had at the top were completely different. And the comments I had at the top on the post were anti-female. The comments she had on the post were anti-male. So they've used this platform to completely brainwash us into one sales pitch or the other. It's marketing 101.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think too, Frankie, if you can sort of extrapolate it and look out from what's happening in the world right now, I think there's a gender divide. I think young boys are confused.
Yep.
Women are just just as confused as men are. And I think we just got to take it back to basics. I think that's what we need to do. You know, what do you think that needs to be done? Like, does there need to be more education in school? You know, do young boys need to learn how to correctly, embrace their masculinity just as much as women need to embrace their femininity?
You know, this is a very, how should I put this, dangerous terminology we're throwing out there. Because even within that, the definition of masculinity and femininity, the definition of boys need to learn masculinity, women need to learn femininity, the whole definitions that are the main problem with what's happening at the moment, especially in the schooling systems. Because even the schooling, the government, anyone in an authority position has to tiptoe so carefully before they get thrown apart. I think, and I don't want to pull apart what you said, but I think this is predominantly the issue we're facing, where men have to be this concept of masculine and women have to be this concept of feminine. And then what ends up happening is the people that are good at marketing and sales plague people on those definitions. There's a very individuality with every single person. And this is where trying to find, and again, another term to use, a binary definition is very difficult because there's such a different contrast in every individual. However, you are absolutely right. Men are confused, women, boys, girls, everyone's confused of what it's meant to be. You ask 20 different women, what do you think you want out of a masculine man? And their definitions are miles apart. And more importantly, you ask women that want masculine men, go, okay, so what's the counterpart balance for the feminine? And this is, I've always talked about it, it's the balance of the polarities. Like internally, you need to have a healthy balance between masculine and femininity.
Yes.
In a relationship, you need to have a healthy balance between masculine and feminine. It doesn't mean male or female, because nowadays the world's really separated and people have the different blends, but it's finding that balance internally and within all your relationships. And this, unfortunately, whether you look at the red pill alpha male movement or you look at, I want to term this right, there's no way to term it right, the extreme toxic feminist movement, the extreme, and not the feminism or women's empowerment, but the extreme version where it's a hating the opposite gender approach. It's very much focused on hate, not love. It's very much focused on external, not internal. It's very much focused on dividing, not uniting. And that's where a lot of it gets taken away. As soon as we go, and I always say it, like I studied my 2 years in my master's in counseling, only to realize counseling was bullshit. Like it leaves you in a victim mentality. All they want you to do is just sit there and vent about your problems. You know, earlier on you asked me what I've done in my approach that can now help men. And in the masculine, just talking from your emotions doesn't help anything. It's important to understand your emotions, articulate your emotions, process your emotions. But as a masculine man, one of the things that really resonates with us is those achievements. So we need to tap into that feminine energy and learn how to be compassionate to ourselves. But also, and this is probably going to trigger a lot of people, I think there's toxic femininity. Toxic femininity is exactly the same as toxic masculinity. Toxic femininity is in the absence of any masculinity. So when their emotions run wild, male or female, when your emotions run wild, when you have no control over the way you feel, when you believe your exaggerated fear response and emotions is the reality, when you have no logical understanding or reasoning, when you have no assertiveness or competitiveness to achieve anything in life, you fall into a very toxic feminine space. So I think it works across the board that it's not about dividing the feminine and the masculine. It's about uniting it.
Yeah. Have you heard the famous podcaster, Chris Williamson? He said that male depression gets treated like female depression.
Absolutely.
All men want to do is feel capable and powerful. They want to feel needed. I think this is another thing why men feel lost today, is because they are in a predicament where they don't know their place in the world. They feel lost. And there was a study published on the Lost Boys. And I think, I haven't read the full article, but I think I've heard that a lot of it is just in speculation, with young boys feeling lost. They have no direction in life. They just feel purposeless. They don't feel needed. They don't feel wanted. And I think also in therapy, I think, men are completely different in how they respond to emotions and adversity. And, I think men just want to feel capable and powerful. And it's that old saying, give a man a purpose and the ability to achieve it, and he will crawl over broken glass with a smile. Do you feel that men nowadays, the treatment isn't working? We have to do something different. What do you think needs to happen in order for men to feel capable, needed, and powerful?
Very good points. And this is one of the driving factors that led me into going through different modalities and really working on myself from a different traditional psychologist approach. And I want to break down this in two different points. The first one is the problem with talk therapy and the problem between men and women, the masculine and the feminine, is when you're highly set into a masculine mindset, which most, for this argument's sake, let's say most men are, what ends up happening is one of the biggest parts in us as men is our ego. And what ends up happening is our ego is our protector. It gets developed from a young age as an identity that we need to show the world in order to be accepted by that world. And what ends up happening is that identity that we create for ourselves becomes so real and so powerful that it's the driving force in front of us. So when you get a female psychologist sitting in front of you, asking you questions, trying to get you to talk deeper about your emotions, you talk from your ego. I spent 10 years in talk therapy telling the same ego stories over and over again. This is the problem in that talk therapy space. Because at the moment, that therapy space is only simply trying to get you to better articulate and talk about your problems. As men, we need to learn how to go deeper into those emotions. So I use things like hypnotherapy, different holistic style modalities, things that disarmed my ego without my choice. Holotropic breath work, a lot of these things that switch off that prefrontal cortex, which is making you talk from your ego and your logical brain. Women can, let me be careful. The feminine can sit there and vent and be emotional and express and comfortably cry and release and process those emotions. Men, we get taught we can't. And this is, again, a Chris Williamson concept, which is absolutely true, is men today are getting criticized for the patriarchy that they get no benefit from. And men today are affected from the patriarchy as badly as women. And I know this might really trigger a lot of women, but everything that we talk about when men don't know what they're meant to be is because the patriarchy has taught us a man's role is to earn, provide, and if you're not earning, if you're not a top status man, if you're not an alpha male driving the cars. And this is one of the ironic parts, because we want men to be a little bit more gentle and not focus so much on their impressions and their cars. But what are the men that get picked in society? What are the men that get all the attention? What are the lives of the men that we glorify as the ultimate high status man? So I think for men, it's a really important component that they continue with their drive for bettering themselves, achieving, having purpose. The purpose is such a powerful part in the masculine. However, what ends up really destroying a man is when their purpose is only in the front ego. This was my case when I had the biggest gym, one of the biggest gyms in Australia, the finances, the car, the houses. I hated my life because I was so broken inside that I couldn't value anything that I had. this is where, again, I think where it's constantly going wrong for men is that ego achievement. Because now we're in a place where females have all the opportunities to out-earn you, outgrow you, outdo you. So now men's achievements are no longer valued. That's why their achievements have to be a personal reason. I always say external validation ends up being such a dripping kind of feed into your dopamine. You only get drops of it constantly. Because if you're constantly waiting for someone externally to validate what you're doing, you're constantly chasing for more.
Yes.
Men need to get that internal validation for their own purpose and drive and their own value and their own self-worth. It can't be based on those external valuations. And a lot of the movement that's happening on the feminist side of things is absolutely right. Like, I agree with women's empowerment. I come from a country where a lot of people look at the Middle East as this brutal place, and a lot of the dictatorship is. But if you guys have ever met a Persian woman, for most Persian households, they're fierce.
Yeah.
Like, they are fierce. Like, they have respect for their partners outside. In the house, nah. Like, I've got two sisters. I feel sorry for my brother-in-laws. Like, so I come from a very strong female lineage as well. And seeing the power of strong women, seeing women's empowerment nowadays, hearing of all of the issues that are happening as a female in a woman's world nowadays, men need to fucking step up. Men absolutely need to step up. But the problem is, we are getting so attacked from every angle that we're just trying to survive. Again, that unity is missing.
Do you feel that a lot of people tend to measure people on extrinsic value and not intrinsic value? We're measuring people on, as you suggested, that men have always done is to protect, to provide. But now we're in this sticky situation where a lot of women now are outperforming men. And you see this in these TikTok trends, like I want a guy that's in finance, 6 foot, blue eyes, trust fund.
The 1%.
Yeah, the 1%. And these women, I think, and I'm not saying all women, but there are some women that do have these delusional standards. The guy's got to be 6 foot tall, 6-pack abs, fixed 6-figure income.
The 666, I've heard
the 666. Yeah. But I think we're measuring people on extrinsic value and not intrinsic value. And I think this is why men seem to just opt out of the whole dating situation, is because it's just too demanding. It's too stressful. Why do I need to be earning 6 figures and I have to be over 6 feet tall? Like, I think there are even some men even getting surgical operations where they actually, I think they break the femur to make them taller.
Yep.
And this is just unheard of. Like, this would never have.
On all body parts, it's happening.
Yeah, like bigger dick size. And do you feel that we're measuring people on extrinsic value and we've forgotten, the intrinsic value on what it means to be a good person, generous, kind, thoughtful, what do you think?
Let me rewind this for a moment, because everyone's like, we're forgetting. When did we ever focus on intrinsic value? Truly. Like, when in any of our generations, and this is where we talk about the patriarchy destroying men as well, if we want to label the patriarchy or whatever you want to label with the leaders and the growth and the way the world's been designed, when has intrinsic value ever outdone extrinsic? Now, the important part with everything I teach is that intrinsic value. Because if you live a life with that intrinsic value, the truth of the matter is, the men that are focusing on all of those achievements also want the trophy wife. They're not looking for the woman who's truly a good, wants to be, let's for argument's sake, being their counterpart, raise a family, stay at home. They're looking for that woman that ends up being their trophy, like their cars, like their achievements. Again, when a male is only masculine driven, that ends up being what they end up going for. So I think a lot of this focus about the women's unrealistic expectations is again set in the marketplace because men are willing to do those efforts to get those women on the boats. And this is where the second counterpart to this, and it's very unfortunate. I know there's a lot of statistics out there about where the boss babe women trend is going in their 30s and 40s. You speak to most of those women and you're like, what type of man do you want? And she goes, I want a masculine man. I want a high achiever. And you're like, how can you, again, balance the energies? Like, I need a man masculine enough to let me fall in my femininity. And you're like, if you're spending 10 hours a day hustling in your business or in a corporate environment and you're hyper masculine in all your behavior, you're not going to come home and fall into your feminine. Like, this is where a lot of the realities out there is broken. And again, a lot of the terminology we use is these women are delusional. The men are so-and-so. It's this attack on the opposite side where truly some of the best things that I've ever done in my life, and this is after multiple collapses, plagued with depression, drug addictions, everything else, was truly finding what it means to have self-worth, self-value, be proud in my purpose, be proud of who I am, and not try to get the trophy partner, not try to get the achievements where I can flash. And this is where, again, the materialistic world is really affecting us as men and our women as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Frankie. Yeah. What would your advice be to, say, a young boy that's listening to this today that's really having difficulty finding his place in the world? You know, where should he go? How should he navigate his way through? You know, what should he do? Where would be the best place for him to start?
You know, it's funny because I've got a nephew who I've been close to. He's about 20 years old now. And it's very difficult to be motivational and realistic at the same time. Like, I would love to say, you're a beautiful young man. Anyone would be lucky to have you in your life. Just be your natural self. But the reality is, and this is the really difficult part, it might be triggering and it might even contradict a lot of what I say. But ultimately, we live in a marketplace. I would love to see our society be different and focus on intrinsic value and find the effort and peace within someone. But as a man, you have no worth in your youth. And it's that simple. You have to work hard at the gym. You have to pursue careers. You have to take risks. You have to develop those masculine traits. However, one of the most important components, and I'm very glad that the youth nowadays have this, is go down also the self-development healing path as well. Don't wait until you reach our age and go, shit, we fucked it up. Like, I need to go back and remember what happened to me when I was 15. Yep. Nowadays, they have that. So I think more importantly, we need to look at the mentors in the world. We need to look at what the men are doing in the world. So this is one of those things where one of the comments that says a lot, and I know you've mentioned it, and I agree with it, is men are just giving up. Men are finding their back against the wall. The truth of the matter is, my opinion is, men need to step the fuck up. Like, this is not the time to give up. This is not the time to crumble. This is the time to truly work on yourself, become the best version of yourself, to then be able to help other people around you. Because it's the men that are broken, like I was, that when you do the work and you heal yourself, that's when you have the biggest impact.
Yeah. I wish someone told me this, Frankie, that you should use your 20s as a training ground. Yep. Use that as a training ground to build yourself up, whether it's financial, whether it's physical, spiritual, mental, emotional. Use your 20s to work hard and then build yourself up, and then your 30s and so forth. You know, what was something that you wish you had learned when you were younger?
Man, exactly that. Like, I think I'm 43 now. If I had this mindset in my 20s, I would have killed it. In my 20s, I suffered severe depression, drug abuse. Like, I still quit the heavy drugs when I got into Muay Thai. But once my fighting career ended, I was severely addicted to marijuana because it was my coping mechanism. It was my numbing. Again, I in my 20s, I was trying to be a corporate suit wearing BMW driving accountant. But in my soul, I was destroyed. And I wish someone told me exactly what you said. As a man, as a young man, build yourself, be disciplined. And I do feel a lot of the red pill movement, a lot of the alpha movement, at its core, when it ignoring what it says about women, the focus on men to be disciplined, sexually disciplined, physically disciplined, financially disciplined, that all you need to do is work on yourself. You don't belong in the clubs. You don't belong at the parties. You need to drive and work for yourself is absolutely crucial. You know, everyone talks about Andrew Tate. The role model that I would want young men to watch, which is the if you consider Andrew Tate the evil in the world, which I actually think is a marketing genius.
It is.
Like, if you listen to 80% of what he says and you can block out his bullshit, for men, he says all the right things. Train, make money, become independent, become the best version of yourself. Then he talks some shit that gets the viral bait. But I say the counterbalance to that, Tony Robbins.
Yep.
You need to listen to Tony Robbins. Multi-billion-dollar business empire, helped millions of people, all about love. Like, if you want to look at a masculine man who is love-led, who is feminine energy-led with the masculine traits, Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
You want to follow. Like, because I was listening to a lot of Andrew Tate stuff because I was trying to see what the whole buzz was, and I was listening to his long-form content. And I was like, a lot of what he says makes sense, but there's just this hate attached to it.
Yeah.
And I followed Tony Robbins. And I was like, this is what it's love-led, heart-led purpose.
Yeah. You mentioned polarity and also the divide of the masculine and the feminine. And I think a lot of men too struggle with sharing and opening up and being vulnerable and what it means to be vulnerable and how to be vulnerable. You know, we weren't really taught how to expressively, open up about our feelings. And a lot of men really struggle with this. And I think also women struggle with this too. They don't know how to receive a man's vulnerability, and men shy away from crying in front of a woman because, she'll use it against him and a future argument and weaponize it against him. And, this is one of the reasons why the suicide rate is so much higher in men than it is in women. Yeah. But what can we learn about how to express ourselves, openly and honestly without the fear of that being used against us? And both women can learn from this just as much as men, and how they can articulate themselves a little bit better, because this is also a bit of a conundrum that men face too when they're in a romantic, loving relationship.
I'm going to say contradicting things here. So there's the beautiful motivational thing that I want to say, that men should feel safe and vulnerable and open up their heart space. It is true, there needs to be spaces for men to do that. Men need to go on that self-development journey. There's modalities which I find extremely helpful to do that, because it allows us to switch off from our ego. For me, breathwork and hypnotherapy had me crying about the traumas I'd even forgotten about. It was some of the most powerful modalities where I would release the tears, because I reached a stage in my late 30s where I knew I needed to cry. I had so much pain and sadness inside of me from everything that I lost in my life, that I needed to cry, but I didn't know how to. And I tried talking to friends. It doesn't work. So there needs to be spaces for men and modalities and different forms of therapy that allow men to tap into that space.
Yeah.
However, I don't believe, and if you clip this and cut this, I'm probably going to get cop a lot of shit for this. I don't believe it's in the arms of your woman. Now, it doesn't mean to say if you don't lose a loved one, you go and cry to your partner. Absolutely. Like, if I lost my dog, I would be bawling my eyes out to my partner. 100%. Like, I would crumble. But there is a very important energy we need to maintain as men. And it can't be one that constantly crumbles in front of our females. Ultimately, being a masculine man is that protectorship, is that providership, is that leadership. And in any leadership position, if the leader is crumbling, that provides unsafety. It's good for the leader to show vulnerability, and being human, you don't need to be a robot. And there's many ways of showing empathy, compassion, kindness, vulnerability. But I think there is much healthier containers for men to work through their emotions.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, and again, this goes back to the reality of the world we live in. And I was speaking to my partner about this because she's like, why aren't you more vulnerable with me? Why don't you ever complain? I'm like, baby, like, seriously? If like I spent every single night for an hour venting about, oh, work was so difficult, this person annoyed me, I'm so frustrated, oh, poor me. How would you feel about me? Like, truly, how would you then feel about me? Like, women want to sit there, vent, and they don't want solutions. They just want to vent. Men, I'd speak to one of my male friends and this is the problem I'm going through at work. What do you think I should do? Great solution. I'm going to go implement it.
Yeah.
But the trauma inside of me, that needs to be done in a very guided, healthy professional. And that is a very courageous thing to do for any man. I felt that myself when I went down the path, and it needs to be done in the right setting. Because ultimately, when we talk about providing safety for our partners.
Yeah. And I think you're right too, Frankie. I think it depends on the context. If you're moping and, carrying on about minuscule things, of course, yeah, 100%. I totally agree that you shouldn't, do that. But yeah, if it's something serious, like if there's been a death in the family, your dog dies, your partner should be there to support you.
100%. And in those moments, if your partner gets the ick, you're with the wrong fucking partner. However, there is that concept, and if we want to fall down into a masculine-led relationship, and that's if what someone wants, for a lot of people nowadays, and I can respect it, they want that. I respect it, I don't agree with it, but that concept of pure equality, that we're the same, not where human rights are equal, but our behaviors should be identical, then that is something that's very different. But if you want to provide as a man, protectorship, providership, safety, if you want your woman to feel if there's a problem, they can come to you and you solve it. You can't suck about every problem. That completely takes it away. Imagine your boss, your leader, whatever organization you're in. Every time you take a problem that's happened with a customer, they sit there and cry in front of you. Like, you're like, shit, this business is going to fall apart. Same thing happens in a relationship. But it then becomes really important in, again, this is where I want to dilute what I just said, individualism. Like, there's a lot of relationships I know where the male has more feminine energy than the female. The female is the one that's at work. The male is the one that raises the children at home. As long as the masculine and feminine energies are balanced, this isn't male versus female. This is the balance of the energies internally and within a relationship.
Yeah. And Chris Williamson, he said something about vulnerability. He said, men have to earn the right to express their emotions. In other words, they have to accumulate sufficient manly points. The reason why Brad Pitt can cry on camera is because he's Brad Pitt. He's built up so much value in himself. Andrew Tate reportedly told Piers Morgan that he cried in jail. He didn't say it like that. He said tears rolled down my face. But, he's human. Chris Bumstead, who's one of the most famous bodybuilders, reportedly cried in his girlfriend's arms of a tough season. And I think this speaks a lot of volume, because I'm sure there are a lot of men that aren't in a position like Chris Bumstead or Brad Pitt or Andrew Tate that are probably really suffering in silence and need someone to turn to in a times of crisis. What would you say to those type of men?
You know, it's very interesting because the Brad Pitt point, Angelina Jolie left him because she couldn't stand what an emotional wreck he was.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
No,
Brad Pitt
I didn't
was
hear
apparently a stoner, was always moping around. He's not the Brad Pitt you see in the movies.
that.
So the problem falls again, and this is assuming we're talking about a masculine-led relationship, not when it's the opposite way around. When the male is in the masculine, and that's the energy the female wants as well. There are moments, like we've discussed, that happens. I've had elite level, national champion fighters burst in tears in my arms after a loss. Like, I've literally cuddled elite level fighters covered in their blood as they're crying over their loss. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's also nothing wrong with a male who's more inclined towards that feminine energy, as long as you're real with yourself and you choose the right partner. The problem we fall into is there's so many hyper-masculine women that still want that heavily masculine man. And that's when the balances don't mix. That's when there's the clash. That's when the two masculine energies go to war. So the concept of a man needs to earn his tears is one that I would very delicately approach, because then we fall into the same trap of suppression of emotions. However, choosing the container, the space, and the support for those tears is what we need to, as a society, focus on. This is why men's groups, men's movement, men like us, athletes, fighters, business owners, high achievers, talking about this space is really important. And we need to be careful, because even the Chris Williamson podcasts and stuff, we're still focusing on a very certain type of man, which is the high achieving masculine man. Where we're getting it wrong is a lot of men that don't fit into that category are trying to and falling short constantly. I think that internal accountability, and if there's anything a man needs to do, is extreme ownership and internal accountability and being real with who they are. I always said it. As a front, I became the ultimate high-achieving masculine man. Fighter, Muay Thai coach, multiple business owner, highest achievement. My healing journey went all the way down to bringing that sweet little boy that I buried inside of me out, to make that soft, compassionate, loving, nurturing part of me, the feminine energy in me. When they talk about men need, there was a movement of men need to get in touch with their femininity, and men just started wearing fucking pink shirts. Like, that was the wrong message, Yeah. Getting in touch with your femininity happens internally. Compassion, love, kindness, putting your hand on your heart and actually feeling that energy. That is what men lack. And that's where a lot of the focus needs to earn. But I do strongly believe in a relationship dynamic. If you want a masculine-led male relationship with the feminine, you need to be cautious with how you hold yourself, because you ultimately are that leader of your wife, your family, the people that support on you, the leadership role.
What is the role of a man?
Are we talking about a man or the masculine?
What is the role of a man, as what does it mean to be a man in this day and age? What is a man supposed to do in 2025? How is he supposed to navigate his way through this whole thing we call life?
See, not to push back, but I think it's that question that continues to put us into a spiral of trying to label the way every man should be. I would rather ask the question, what is it in 2025 to be a human? What is it to be someone who can give back to humanity, who can help, who can support, who can have internal and external love? What is it to be a human? And I think once we start reflecting more on that, then the divide ends.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah.
I can define masculine, but one of the things that I've learned is the energy balance in people is so vast that we can't then put them into this category.
Yeah. Mental toughness, Frankie, is often talked about in combat sports. But what does that mean to you, and how can fighters cultivate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and this absolutely falls into every element of life. And mental toughness is all about resilience. And resilience is about taking control of your mind. You know, I love the statement, you either let your mind control you or you control your mind. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong, is, again, we talk about your emotions, and your emotions aren't reality. Your emotions are typically a response to a trigger from a part that's inside of you that happened a long time ago. So what we need to do is, the process I always like to do is feel the emotion, process it. So let whatever reaction comes out from that emotion in a healthy state happen. Then go through and analyze where that emotion comes through, find the source of it, and apply logic to it. When you start being able to control your mind to then cause you to control your responses to your emotions, not your reactions to your emotions, that's when mental toughness happens. Because when you look at every element of mental toughness, when someone's exhausted, when someone's defeated, when someone can push through, when someone can't get back up and they continue to do it, that mental toughness comes from when their body wants to give in and their mind becomes stronger. Because ultimately our brains are there. Its default mechanism is to make sure we survive, not thrive. So mental toughness is about being to bypass your default mechanism in your brain and you dictating how you behave and perform. And being able to do that applies to all applications in your life.
Yeah. You did mention resilience as well, Frankie. How do you work with fighters to develop resilience, especially when dealing with losses, injuries, or personal setbacks?
Yeah, absolutely. Really good question. Look, those elements all fall within one of the most powerful concepts I work with athletes and fighters is your why. Why are you doing this? And this all goes back to our original conversation that you need to get past your ego. You need to get past the fame, the glory, the I want to be that person mentality. And if your why, which should be the very main focus for, I believe, everyone, is to create the best version of yourself. And how do you create the best versions of yourself? By the most difficult, grueling situations. You know, Alex Emoji had a pitch about this, and I translated it into fighting as well. And he goes, what happens if you had the opportunity to ask the Muay Thai gods that become exactly the fighter you want to be? You wanted to build up endurance. So they gave you grueling, hard training sessions, moments you couldn't get off the ground, to then teach you what fitness actually means. What if they wanted to have heart and toughness in the ring? Then they turn around and develop in you the hardest setbacks, the biggest losses, and the hardest fights. And then you ask them, why can't I just have an easy way? And they go, the easy way doesn't build the champion, doesn't build the toughness, doesn't build the resilience you need to get to the top. And resilience, that purpose, being able to actually push through your setbacks, your losses. I always tell fighters, your first 10 fights, if you had easy fight, fight number 10, you go for a state title against someone that had a hard fight, who do you think is going to be the better fighter?
The second person.
every single time. And you've achieved it yourself. Every single role you have, every single tap you do, every single disappointment in your podcast, in your business, in your life, and you get back up the next day and you show up and you push through. That builds that arsenal.
Yeah. I think pain plus reflection leads to progress.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
The pain is what causes suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you integrate trauma-informed therapy tools into performance coaching, especially for athletes who may not even recognize the trauma they carry with them?
Yeah, really good. So this all started with my own personal journey. So obviously getting off the drugs, the crime, trying to change my life around was one of my whys. It was the main why. I wanted to get out of that version I created for myself. However, once I became a fighter, I was competing, and I changed my life entirely. When I would run, I would still yell in my own head, "Don't stop, you piece of shit." I would still abuse myself. You look at David Goggins. That's your definition of trauma-based motivational abuse, where you are consistently living in that trauma state, and your foundation and your self-belief is that you're not good enough. One of the interviews that I did, I do these seminars, and I did a question and answer with one of the guys. And he goes that, "I can't respect myself if I don't train." And I was like, do you understand how toxic that statement sounds? You are no longer the person who started this. If you rewind back and go to the person who came first foot into this gym, would that person be proud of you? Would that person be completely amazed, completely shocked at what you achieved? But in your mind, you're still living in that trauma. See, the difficult part being, and one of the psychology theories that I apply to myself and I apply to everyone, it's called internal family systems. And that's parts therapy. We all have different parts inside of us. Part of me that feels confident here, not confident there. Part of me that is proud of myself. The part of me that shames myself. That inner critic is that trauma. That inner critic is that voice of shame. That inner critic part of us is what we need to heal. And then what we need to develop is that part of us that's proud of us, that's valuing us, that intrinsic value that we want. That's the counterbalance to that inner critic. Because what ends up happening is you reach your goals, you achieve these milestones, and then you still don't feel different. Momentarily you do, but inside you're still that broken version of yourself. And this was part of me for 15 years. Long after I changed my life, long after I helped hundreds of thousands of people, long after I did the competition, the coaching, the business, I would still look in the mirror and go, "You piece of shit, you can't stop." This is where that trauma therapy becomes such an important part. And interestingly, I started my master's in counseling to help men. But then I realized, unfortunately for a lot of men, until they hit rock bottom, they're not going to get help. So the fighter's mindset is a product that I've created to firstly help fighters and athletes, but then also have that marketing appeal to attract men.
Yeah.
Tap into their ego for performance, use that as a tool to bring them in, and then heal their trauma.
Yeah, talk to me about that, Frankie. Talk to me about your program and how that sort of works with fighters and mental toughness and resiliency.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what I do is a 5-week intensive coaching program where it's usually based around their fight camp that they come to me, and there's things that they're battling. There's the voices they're battling. So what we do is a surface level approach where we're like, look, what is your primary negative voice that's holding you back? What are your doubts? What are your insecurities? What are your fears? And a lot of it is asking them the hard questions to teach them how to articulate their responses to their negative voices better. On top of that, my experience in hypnotherapy, I've done my breathwork certifications. I do some breathwork visualization. So it actually gets them calming their nervous system, tapping into their breath, bringing them into a meditative state. and getting them to visualize through different components, whether it's, some of my fighters come through and when they start struggling and hurting on pads or the rolls or they're sparring, they start really doubting themselves, they start retreating, they start feeling weak. So I get them to search for suffering. I get them to reset their mind, that their brain no longer looks at their suffering and their struggle as a negative thing, but it's a positive attribute. Other fighters I deal with, and they're just brawlers, they're aggressive. So we get them to focus a lot more on the technical skill set, calming themselves down, falling into a flow state. And then we also build out the fight visualization. So the concept being is 5 weeks leading into your fight. Every day you do a 15-minute visualization, which gets you living everything about fight night in your brain. So you're actually visualizing the fight every single time. Conor McGregor said it the best way, and this is what inspired me. He was going for his first title fight at the UFC. And the commentator on the post-weigh-in was like, look, aren't you nervous? You've come up through the ranks so quickly. You've beaten everyone that you shouldn't have beaten. And now in such a short period of time, you've got to fight a championship opportunity. You don't think you're the underdog and you've bitten off more than you chew? You're not nervous? And he goes, what have I got to be nervous about? I've played out tomorrow night in my head 1,000 times. I've won tomorrow night in my head 1,000 times. Tomorrow night, I'm going to show up and do exactly what I've done in my 1,000 times. And that was McGregor before McGregor became who he is now. His belief, his visualization, his self-talk was the reason for his success. Absolutely. And this is one of the things we focus on. Like I always tell fighters, there's 4 parts to our sport. The physical. You need to do the physical training. You can't be unfit. You need to do the runs, the pad work, the sparring, the rolls, the clinch, everything. Skill set, you need to improve. Tactical is you need to learn the sport. These 3 are really important. But on fight night, the training, the mindsets, if your mind is off, that's the difference between performing and not performing. And this is such a big focus. And then most of my guys continue on a weekly or a fortnightly coaching call where we then unwrap everything else about their project. Because at an elite level, whether it's business or competition, you're going through an emotional roller coaster. And you just need someone in your corner that has been there and understood it, but then can back it up with the neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality to really bring it all together.
Yeah, there's some unbelievable footage, Frankie, of Conor McGregor in the locker room when he knocked out Jose Aldo. He knocked him out in 13 seconds. Yeah. There's footage of Conor McGregor exactly telegraphing how he was going to knock him out. And he hit him with that left hand. So you see him draw back, Jose Aldo commits, hits him with that left hand, knocks him out. And then in an interview, he literally, I think, word for word, I think the reporter exactly told Conor, he read it back to him, exactly what he had told the interviewer, what he was going to do to Jose Aldo. He's going to... Yeah, he saw the twitch. He saw it happen. He visualized. Did you see all those events happen? Like, it's pretty remarkable. And this is the thing. Yeah, this is the thing. This is the power of visualization. Do you go into this kind of depth with your fighters?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very cautious. I don't go as far as Mystic Mac and get them to visualize the knockout. But we absolutely visualize the strikes. We visualize the fences. We visualize the speed. Like one of the guys we're working in with right now, he's learning how to switch from orthodox to southpaw. So we get him to visualize his technique afterwards, because the neuroscience, and you would have heard Huberman talk about this, is you practice the technique physically, then during your rest period is when you turn around and your brain absorbs it. During that rest period, if you're replaying it through your brain, is when it cements it. There's a really famous study they did, and there was 2 different groups of pianists. One professional pianist. One group got a song and got only the permission to visualize practicing that song. The other one got the song and got the ability to practice. After a week, the group that visualized it performed better because their visualization was perfection with no mistakes. Wow. These guys had the mistakes in place. The power of the mind, visualization. Look, And this is really important. I always say the visualization without the evidence is just mental masturbation. So if you're visualizing, and this is the hippie approach gone wrong, that I manifest money coming to me, and then you sit there and smoke weed all day, you're going to stay broke. So for a lot of these guys, what we're doing is the mental reps that cement the physical reps.
Yep.
That's where it all comes together. All the fighters I work with, once they do my pre-fight visualization, they show up to the fight night and they're like, this is the calmest I've ever been. I've walked in this setting. You know, in Muay Thai, we do the rub downs, we do the pad work before, the walkout, the preparation, hearing your name get called. We visualize all of that. What we also focus a lot on is the specific technique they're working. So the block and counters, their balance, their footwork, their movement. Really, I always call it the snapshot visualization. They imagine the photos of them perfecting that perfect technique. Chin down, hand across, sharp knee. We even get them to look at photos of their fights and look at how an improvement in hip position, guard position, and they visualize that. And there's so much science behind the proven effect of deep set visualization that absolutely backs all of this. But I wouldn't go as far as getting a 13-second knockout visualization.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Back in the day, the Ali's and the Mayweathers, it doesn't have to be about a certain technique. That belief, that confidence, one of the things I always work with the fighters is on the week of fight night, embody the world champion mindset. How would a world champion wake up? How would a world champion eat their breakfast? How would a world champion approach? Show up as the champion. Right now, I'm working with a junior Australian gymnastic champion, so gymnastics as well and other Olympic-based sport, and she's on track to go to the Olympics. Everything we work with her is the same as the athletes and the fighters, where they're focusing on what the competition is going to be like, what parts you need to focus on, what the technique is going to look like, how she's going to ground herself, to center herself in the energy, the confidence, the belief. And all of this is what happens during the training. And I always tell people, I go, what percentage, you've been in the game long enough, do you think is physical? What percentage of fighting do you think is mental, James?
I think mental by far. Yeah, you can get the physical down pat, but if you're mentally not right, it just goes out the fucking window.
So for a lot of people, they easily agree somewhere 70, 80% is mental. Now, if for simplicity and mathematics base, if we say 50-50 is the split, most elite level fighters and even professionals and, you know, state level fighters, they train about 3-4 hours a day, 15 to 20 hours of physical training a week. Now, do you think they're doing the opposite equal amount of mindset and mental training in it? No. Most people just show up to training, switch off and try to survive. Yeah. So a lot of what we do is when you go on your run, you want to picture the rounds of your fight. You want to have a finish line. So when you finish that run, you finish at your highest speed, like you're finishing a round. You're shadow boxing. Every time that bell goes and that buzzer hits, you're focusing. You're building up that focus, that mental energy. You're building up that adrenaline. You're building up that hype. You're controlling your breath to calm and recover yourself down. One of the things I get the fighters to do is show up to training to lose. Get past your ego. Don't show up to training and do the shots that you know are going to land. For the BJJ guys, don't go to the same submission. Don't go to the same side. Don't go to the same position that you know you're going to get the tap. Show up to lose every single fucking night to then show up to competition to win.
Yeah.
But again, it's about pulling apart that ego, pulling apart your emotions, and understanding what growth happens, where growth happens. Search for that suffering, search for the struggle, search for the loss, and convince your brain that's where the growth happens.
What are some of the common misconceptions about mindset, in particular when we're talking about combat sports, Frankie? You know, how do you challenge those beliefs?
Yeah, look, a lot of the mindset stuff out there, and I always tell the fighters, so whenever I do a seminar or whenever I work with one of my clients, I go, you have to remember you're the 1%. And what that means is out of all the people that have walked foot into your gym that has said they want to be a fighter, you're the 1% stepping over those ropes and stepping onto those mats to fight. So being that 1%, you need to understand the marketing motivational abuse out there is aimed at the people sitting on the couch. I've always said it, David Goggins needs a fucking hug. Like at some point, bro, you got to realize you're okay. Because I look at someone like him and that's not motivational for me. That's a severely traumatized man who has so much pain and suffering that abuse is the only way he can find peace. That can't be your purpose. That can't be your mindset. That's the toxic masculine. That's the one who has no compassion, empathy, kindness, or love to himself. So mindset is about really tapping in to the truth about what the voices in your head are telling you. And then building that counterbalance to those voices. Because I always say your subconscious is like a record player playing in the background. It's on mute. You don't hear it, but your body reacts to it. So all the things that have happened to your past, all your trauma, all your insecurities, all your self-doubt, your losses, your knockouts, your bullying, whatever's happened in the past, it gets your body to react in a certain way. What we want to do with mindset training is first and foremost, and this is the trauma-informed part, is turn up that volume. Hear what the voices in your head are, and then build up the counter voice to that based on evidence of what you're doing today. Every time you have self-doubt at the end of training, you just put in 3 hours of grueling hard sessions. Every time you have insecurities, you turn around and you back it up with the training, the nutrition, the commitment, the discipline. Every time you're scared of losing, you build the mindset that the losses are the best battles that create closer to that big win.
Yeah.
It's that kind of mindset training that becomes so important. And one of the most important parts, which again is sold completely wrong on social media, is you don't need motivation. All you need is discipline. For the person sitting on the couch, all you need is discipline. For the person grinding every day, 3-4 hours a day training, 20 hours of training a week, weight cut, commitment, sacrifice, giving their entire life up to the sport, there reaches the point where they hit burnout from that discipline. That's where motivation from why, from your purpose, from the truth of why you're doing this kicks in. Motivation and discipline work hand in hand. The days that motivation is lacking, discipline, your habits step in to make sure you continue to put the work in. The days that the day in, day out work becomes grueling, your purpose and why gives you fire and energy. It's those balances. And this is what I always tell people. Don't listen to David Goggins if you're an elite level fighter.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Charles Poliquin. I don't know if you know who Charles Poliquin was. He was a very...
Coach?
What was that, sorry?
The strength coach, was it?
That's right, yeah. He was a world-famous strength and conditioning coach who trained numerous Olympic medalists, world champions. But he said on a podcast, following your passion is bullshit. You need to get good at a skill. If you get good at a skill, your passion will come out of that. Like, you can't just say, I'm going to be passionate about the violin, and you haven't even played the violin. You know, you need to learn how to play the violin, and then your passion comes out of that. Do you think there is some truth to that statement?
100%. It's self-discovery.
Yeah.
One of the things a lot of people lack in this world is they get told what they should be. They don't go on the journey of discovery. And I always say this, like the concept of you need a lot of failures before your successes, and overnight success is 10 years of failure before that overnight success. Like, these components are so true. Like, I don't come from a family of athletes, fighters. My sister's a dentist. The other one's a podiatrist. My dad was an accountant. Like, there is no sporting history in my entire family lineage. Yet somehow I became a Muay Thai coach. And this is the really important part. It's the journey you get put onto this life. But one of the things that's wrong as being a human nowadays is we get told that you have to go in this lane. And if you go off this lane, your life is ruined. Whereas my life restarted multiple times. I've gained everything and lost everything multiple times. And I've reached that, I've got some white whiskers in my beard now, that tender age where I look at the biggest, most devastating losses and difficult moments in my life. And on the opposite side of that, because I woke up every day and pushed through, was a new passion and purpose that was an extension of everything I've done in the past. I started off as a fighter, then I became an assistant coach, then I became the head coach, then I ran my Muay Thai gym, then I became a business coach for the combat sports space. Now I'm back to helping fighters, becoming a mindset coach because of my passion with counseling and mental health. It has all been a continuation and the evolution of myself through all my wins and all my losses. And the most important part was extreme ownership and accountability. Every time anything went wrong, I looked internally. How can I be better? For half my life, that was from a place of shame. The other half of my life has become from a place of love. Love for myself and love for the people in my life. That's where the healthy balance kicks in.
For anyone that's listening to this, Frankie, what do you hope people can learn from this discussion?
That they need to stop scrolling.
I agree.
The problem is, and I have been caught in this space, the rage bait, the way the algorithms created, toxicity sells. I would choose consciously what I program my mind with. Consciousness, not in a spiritual space, but in a space of being present, where I'm conscious with my decisions. I'm choosing every element of my life consciously with thought and effort. I'm not in order.
Yeah. And constantly, consciously, if you are scrolling, following people that you feel are good for you, and the other part of it is just noise, being very attentive towards what you consume, not just what you eat, but also what you watch. Would you agree with that too?
100%. Everyone knows the saying, you are the 5 people you spend the most time with. Nowadays, the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with is on your phone.
Yeah.
You get to choose who those 5 people are. You get to choose if it's Andrew Tate or Tony Robbins. Your choice. And truly, when you start choosing that, then you see the power of the mind. Because it is absolutely whatever you condition your brain with becomes the outcome of that.
Yes. Frankie, where can people find you? If they want to book in a consult with you, what do they need to do?
So look, if you're a gym owner that needs help in growth, the Fight Business Coach on Instagram. Otherwise, if you're a gym owner or a fighter that's helping with the mindset side of things, the Mindset Coach on Instagram as well.
Yeah. And what have you got coming up? Any events or anything in particular?
Yeah, plenty. So I'm also going to set up the Fighters Mindset podcast, very similar to this, but coaching and speaking to a lot of top-level coaches, athletes, and fighters down that project.
Amazing.
They launched a business coaching in New Zealand and looking at launching in the UK as well. So very exciting times. But my passion with everything I do is mindset. So this is where I look to explore this project, because I think I've got a very different view than what is getting pushed out.
Yeah, that's going to be fantastic. That'll be very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to go.
I appreciate the time and space, man. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks, Frankie. Awesome, mate.
See you later.